Y'all, does it seem like humanity is gangbanging right now? Like, does it feel like we are being super tribal and out of control? If you're wondering what's going on, this is the episode where we're going to explore why we're seeing so much divided tribal behavior and what we can do about it. Stay tuned. Hey, creators. Welcome to Minding Your Amygdala, the brain, body, and behavior podcast where you'll learn to awaken to your emotions, get informed about your biology, and motivated to use skills to improve your mental health. I'm your host, Dr. Lana, America's one and only trauma psychiatrist. Do you recognize the critical importance of emotions and mental health? Do you want to know more about how to self-recover from trauma? Do you want to better understand the updated science about how our brain and body shapes our behaviors? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. This podcast is focused on making complex brain science simple and usable. You'll learn the 6 primitive brain systems predictably programmed by trauma and empathy skills practice, my unique methodology that can help you improve your own thoughts, emotions, and actions. I'm the Skills Over Pills doc, but I'm also a mom of 3, a busy entrepreneur, and a human being trying to make it through multiple global pandemics just like you. Minding Your Amygdala will teach you transformative ways that you can approach your day-to-day life, and I'll give you strategies to break free from the trauma cycle. All right, let's get started. Hey friends, fellow creators. How you doing? You're not imagining it. It really does seem like humanity is gangbanging right now. It seems like everybody's fighting about something. And it seems as if we are more divided than ever. And so when it comes to considering mental health and how just the state of the world affects our mental health, we have to start asking ourselves, how do we actually heal our divisions? How do we become psychologically more united? You know, it's interesting being a trauma psychiatrist. A lot of people tell me their problems, even though I am retired and I do not have a clinical practice and I will not see anyone one-on-one. People share with me very often how they feel and what they think about things. And I have not heard anyone say that they think that humanity is okay. Nobody is saying that humans are doing amazingly well. In fact, I hear the term mass global mental health crisis more and more because that's what it is. There is most certainly good reason for concern. And in America, we have enough resources to have collected enough data to show that not only are children experiencing higher levels of mental health crises, but adults are also having a lot of difficulty with their mental health and their emotional health. And when you attempt to use whatever resources you have, whether it's insurance or paying out of pocket to get into mental health care, many people don't, first of all, don't even know where to start. Second of all, there's a lot of junk products out there and people who are sometimes prescribing medications, maybe not in the most helpful way for mental health. And it is a difficult thing to sometimes find a provider that can see you in a timely fashion or see your children or loved ones in a timely fashion. Many people are having difficulty accessing insurance to even get in with a mental health practitioner, which only in the last 10 years or so have insurance companies been required to provide mental health services. So this is how far behind we are on this concept that mental health is for everyone. So even if you get in with a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you may not fully understand which type of practitioner that you need, or that you may not connect with that person in a way that makes you feel comfortable or feel like what they're providing is what you need specifically. And then we also have this challenge that even within the mental health sphere, because trauma has historically been thought of something that is just one of the many different diagnoses that people can have, versus thinking about trauma as a core condition that all people have, in addition to the other challenges that may be presenting themselves. There are still those core traumas that have programmed a person's brain and biology. That is not how most of our medical and mental health practitioners have been taught to think about mental health. If you listen to this podcast in the previous episodes, you may know more, you will know more about specifically the mental health biology of the brain than your average practitioner. And that becomes a problem because we do not have enough people who are really hitting the mark on what most people need. And so, as we do the work of recognizing that mental health is something that all people need to be connected to and aware of and working on, we have this tremendous hurdle of the gap that we have to get across. And so I think that what is most helpful in my mind to get us started on a different path is for each individual to work on their damn self. Okay. And what I mean by that is, if I'm starting with you, because I've got you here with me, I'm here with you. Let's keep it real. This brain, it does stuff. It's doing stuff. This biology that we have, that we're sitting in, is primitive and it's advanced. It's amazing. The technology that is every human being is fascinating. However, we have been taught more about external technologies and things that are going on in front of us than to actually teach us about this primitive brain and how it creates the internal experience that we have. So when you're listening to my podcast and you hear me talking about our amygdalas, that's the reason why you need to understand it. Because if all human beings have emotions, but we've been taught to ignore them, we've been taught that we don't have them or that they don't do anything, then we are missing a huge, huge amount of information, a huge amount. So let's talk about how this contributes to gangbanging that humans are doing right now. The amount of fighting, the amount of bickering, the amount of verbal violence, the amount of physical violence that is going on in our society right now is just pretty amazing. I mean, it's really, it's even hard to characterize the amount of back and forth and primitive grouping, tribalism that humans are displaying right now. to the point of having war. The war in Russia versus Ukraine is about primitive tribalism. I have my group, you are in another group. I don't like it because your group is different. And because you are different, because I've put this subjective label on you of different or other, I can now kill you or cause you some specific harm intentionally to damage you. Or I can say anything that I want to say out loud to you, maybe in front of you, maybe about you. I can take from you if I think that you don't deserve to have something. And so that is the mentality that drives any gang, right? A gang is just a group of people that get together, identify with the same cause, and want to hang together, right? We have this tendency to think that gangs are only the Bloods and the Crips. That only Black folks, I guess, supposedly have gangs. But guess what? Gangs are not always a bad thing. Having your gang, having your squad, having your people, it provides reinforcement, it provides safety, it provides role models. Having your gang is what everyone wants in some shape, form, or fashion. Yes. Yes, I'm a believer. Speaking from someone who has gang banged, okay, as a youth. But the concept of having your own group, having your own chosen family, or sometimes your gang is your biological family. There's some biological families. They'll beat you up if you mess with one of them. You better leave them alone. So look, having a gang, a group of people that you identify with is actually a healthy human trait. However, what happens when we form these tribes, these chosen families, these groups, we have a tendency to prioritize ourselves biologically into the what we call right. We get that hit of dopamine, boom. My group, my beliefs, how I was raised, or even if you changed from what you've been raised, whatever I identify with as my belief system is the best, or else I wouldn't believe it. That's how we think. That's what humans do. So let me give you some examples of our gangbanging in society that goes way beyond Black folks. We have our political parties. We got Republican and Democrat, and they're in their gangbanging, right? They have rules that Robert's rules of order that they try to use, or whatever their systems are. But the reality is that the way that we talk to each other, the way we think about each other, the way we respond to each other's ideas and thought processes, because they are colored in Republican and Democrat, those subjective labels, there are often places where we reject what the other people are saying, just in part because of their label. And we allow ourselves to say negative things about other people, and we group them, right? A gang is a group. And that chosen group, when I think of it and I say my beliefs, my belief systems, they are the ones that are the best. It then gives people a self-righteousness with which colors how they interact with the people who identify by the other label. Other examples of gangs, men and women. We gang up on each other. We, of course, have relationships and we have interactions between the opposite sexes. And then, of course, what I'm doing here is generalizing, right? Because we know that there are specific individuals that are going to experience things differently. But overall, if you look at the world and society at large, there are, because we live in a male dominated global society, there is extremes of like active oppression of women, for example, what the Taliban are doing in Afghanistan. And then there are extremes of men versus women battles in the United States when it comes to controlling the process of fertility and bringing life. So we have religious gangs. there, when you look at the way that most religions are taught to regard other religions, my holy person is better than yours. My God is rocking out more than yours. You use a different term than me, so you must be talking about a different entity. And because we use different words and terms for these concepts, then we go, they're wrong. They're bad. I'm right. The only way to do things is my version, and I must impose it upon anyone who does not agree with me, go to hell. In many places, you can be killed for your different version of religious beliefs or kidnapped, reprogrammed, taken away to concentration camps. The whole Holocaust was about murdering people that were different. And so when we think about law, the way we do when you have the police against the criminals, and whatever the subjective label that we use to put on people who have broken some law. And when we use subjective labels like criminal, it allows us to dehumanize the person, the individual that is having that experience. And so, more examples, the false concept of race. There is no such thing as race, except for there's one human race. I'm saying there's no such thing as races, plural, because there is one human race. There is such thing as ethnicities, which we have many, and cultures. So cultures like Black and white have been for many years pitted against each other in a very delusional way that really doesn't exist. There have been many elements over the years of humans looking at one group or another, putting them in a category, saying, this is my gang, you're in that gang over there. Even if you have one drop of African blood, you're in that gang. And then we use these very subjective, arbitrary ways of describing differences, and we make them very big. And then those differences actually begin to gain meaning because of the way that we treat each other over time. Straight versus gay, LGBTQIA, and other, right? I don't necessarily believe in a lot of those terms, but the point, or I would say those terms sometimes are unhelpful, is a better way to say it. But there is a attitude that if you are in other group and you practice different ways of relating to other human beings, then I need to do something, whether it's make laws or say words to you that even maybe to your face, say something ugly to you because I don't like what you're doing. That's gangbanging behavior, right? Seeing a different group, thinking that they should or should not be different than they are, and then actively, sometimes aggressively, addressing them and saying things to them or about them, judging them in some way. That's gangbanging behavior in music. I admittedly am a fan of hip hop, and it makes me very sad to see the state that it comes to when so many people die because of the violence in our music. And so that them versus me mentality, it is so common in the way that we think about other people. We tend to pick a pick a target, pick a fight when we can, in part because humans love a good argument. We love trauma drama. we feed off of it. It gives us dopamine. We're really addicted to it. But let's look at news. We've got the left and the right. We've got the left wing and the right wing and different types of media, and they can talk about the exact same circumstances, and they can describe it subjectively so different that people have a completely different understanding of what has taken place. That is gang banging behavior, because what that sets up is the biology that reinforces, well, I'm right. It reinforces implicit biases when you can, implicit and explicit biases, because it feeds into what we call confirmation bias. All human beings have confirmation bias. It's actually our strongest bias. And that bias is that we're right. And that when other people say things that fit our belief system or that feed our belief system and where we want to go or what we want to believe, we accept that information more readily. It lands in our brain, it hits that dopamine. It's like, yeah, that's right. I'm right. You're right. Boom, programmed in there. And if they hear something from other people, people that may not fit the description of where they think the information should come from, they will believe that person less, even, or that source less, even if that source is based on objective evidence. Because humans are driven by our primitive biology without our awareness. So when we experience these rushes and feelings and thoughts in our brain and we calculate information, we go, I believe that. I'm part of that tribe. That is my culture. That's my belief system. And then we look out there and we go, you're the other. You are on the other side. I'm a freshman, you're a sophomore. I'm in this college, you're in that one. We have a culturally endorsed tendency to pick sides, right? But the interesting part about that is that these are all really subjective labels. And when you're thinking of anything in terms of a subjective label, you are thinking about a general concept, not the individual. When you use subjective labels to place on people and place on things, you are actually going to be operating in a state that is semi-delusional. And what I mean by that is that you are going to be assuming a great many things about something because it fits a category or a label that you've been taught to think. Now, tribalism, it's in our biology. It's kind of what we do. If you go back to the origins of humanity in the African continent and arising out of that region and spreading across the face of the earth, it made sense for us to group together. You need to know who you need people to survive. That's how we're built. That's biologically how we're designed. We group with those who are similar to us. We tend to very quickly identify people who seem to be the same or in a similar category who we might feel familiar with. That's less for us internally to fear. This goes to our implicit bias, where we have a tendency to gravitate towards things that we know because that makes us feel more comfortable, which is why in hiring, in like HR, for example, it's important to understand bias because, if you're a white person who is very much about anti-racism, but you don't recognize when you're interviewing a candidate and you really just like this person to get a great vibe from them because they're familiar to you and they make you feel more comfortable than another candidate who might be African American, and you're not as comfortable, but they might actually be better at the job. But your implicit internal experience of comfort has makes you gravitate towards the people that you have the most empathy with, and you wouldn't know that without having that deeper understanding of how your brain processes information. So I use that as an example to recognize our default internal experience biologically is to group with same. There is just nothing that we despise more than fear and pain. And so often with people who are different or places or experiences that are outside of our comfort zone, we experience internal uncertainty. We experience the impact of fear. And again, I emphasize that even in the boldest bleep bleep ever, there is fear. Fear is a internal experience that a operational human has to experience. It's biologically programmed in us. So it is important to understand that fear is present even when we do not identify it. But as we understand uncertainty and we understand that our bodies have a tendency to want to move us away from things that don't feel safe, our primitive brain, which is pieces other than the amygdala, but the amygdala is the emotion generator. So that's the one I focus on today. And you can go back in the podcast to explore more of those primitive brain systems. It's important to understand that our primitive brain is going to interpret those subjective things as, if it's predictable, it's safe. If it's unpredictable, that means danger. That means unknown. And because our amygdalas are so powerful, and mind you, the effect of the many years of terrorism that we have experienced, not just in America, but across the world, is that fear is actually so much a part of the experience of our world that we don't really recognize it. But fear begets the suspicion that we have for each other, distrust that people have. And then with that distrust and those negative labels, there's more disgust. And then that becomes dismissal. I can dismiss and dehumanize you with this subjective label of criminal or gay or homeless or irresponsible or whatever negative label that we use to describe the other gang, the other person. I don't have to hear you fully because when you say things that are different from my belief system, I can diminish what you're saying. I can operate without empathy for your experience and what you're trying to tell me. So I think I say that to say that our lack of empathy for each other is really the core of the problem. When you lack empathy and you're unable, and by empathy, I mean cognitive empathy. If effective empathy is empathy as it relates to the emotions and being aware of the emotions. So that's important. On a deeper level, cognitive empathy is about being able to inhabit the experience of the other, not just get in their shoes, get in their experience, get in their thought processes, get in their mind, and be able to consider whatever they're saying, whatever's happening between you, whatever you're saying, from a standpoint outside of yourself, outside of your own biology. because the minute someone else starts talking, our biology gets to walking. It's just doing stuff in there. And our inability to recognize the impact of our intense internal sensations, our biological responses, our our significant emotional experience that is being a human on this earth is problematic. We have to be able to connect to other people in order to understand the shared reality that we exist in. No one can have every experience on earth. So operating in a state of fear and distrust is going to inherently help us to create more fear and distrust. And this cycle of trauma will continue until you get your shit together. And me too. When we focus on our own mental health, our own emotional intelligence is so crucial. It's so crucial to collective mental health. You don't have to go back to medical school. I went through it for you. You don't have to go to psychiatry residency. I went through it for you so that you can learn about your brain. Your brain is your most important tool. It is making decisions for you. It is interpreting what I'm saying right now for you, and it goes with you everywhere you go. It makes your emotion decisions, not your heart, not your gut. It's where your instincts come from, but that's housed in your brain. And you don't have to go do a whole bunch of research, but you're welcome to. It's important. A lot of the research about the amygdala and the reticular activating system and somatosensory cortex is relatively new. However, there are definitely articles out there now about these brain systems. And of course, you can go back in this podcast. My point is that you can start correcting your own misunderstanding of emotions right now, today. It's already done. Isn't that wonderful? You can start understanding them as the most important thing that you can pay attention to. And paying attention to your emotions, making space for them, giving names to them, giving awareness, expressing your emotions, figuring out how to understand them is the most important information that you can do. I invite you to go deeper with me in the trauma cure. The next trauma cure, for those who've been asking, is March 9th through 11th. And we will be taking that deep dive. In 3 days, we will be exploring this beautiful thing that we call the human brain, body, and behavior. But I've got a little homework for you. I want you to think about, who do you dehumanize with your subjective labels? Where are you being tribal in your life, picking a side and being unable, or more so unwilling, to calm yourself enough to hear the other side? What's the name of your gang? Gang, gang. And what you gonna do about it? That is this episode of the Minding Your Amygdala podcast. Please like, subscribe, rate, and give feedback. I hope to see you all at the Trauma Cure.